Did you enjoy that poem by that girl? She did a great job at reading it, didn't she? She used such expression and just a great poem about, what was it about? Did you get what it was about? About maybe writing a poem or writing an essay or maybe writing something for your teacher. She was struggling to write, and she was writing a poem, or she wrote a poem about the process of struggling to write. Why did I show you that? Why did I begin with that today? Is because this week we're going to be talking about poetry. And so each day we're going to be looking at different poems. Our story is full of poems this week, and you're also going to be writing your own poem and turn in for a grade this week. So a lot of fun things to do with poetry. I love poetry. As a matter of fact, I wrote a poem for every day this week that I'm going to read to you as we go through our lessons. And so we're going to start with my poem now too, and then we'll get you into our story for this week. But my poem for today is called My Cat. Now, I want you to notice what I did with my poem today. I took my cat's name, Shasta, and for my poem this week, I wrote a line for each of her letters of her name. So here's my poem called My Cat. She's quite plump and round, hair of gray and white, always a mouse to be found. She catches them at night. Thankful for her purr, all my family will concur. That means they'll agree. So there's my poem about my cat. It rhymes. Every other line rhymes. Round, found, white, night, and then I ended with purr and concur, rhyming. So poems can come in all kinds of forms. They can be kind of an acronym like this, where you start each line with to form a word going down. We're going to look at different forms. Poems can be written in different shapes. We're going to find out in one of our stories one of our poems about a balloon. In the story this week is written in the shape of a balloon. And so we'll take a look at that in just a minute. So I want you to be thinking as we go through our lesson today and talk about some things. What would be something that you could write a poem about that's really interesting to you? I'll have a new idea of my own for you each day. You can write about your pet like I did today. All right, so let's take a look at, first off, some words that we're going to need to know for this story that we read. And so there are 6 of them. This first word is necessary. It's probably harder to spell than it is to remember what it means, because it's a word we use a lot, necessary, Necess, 2 S's there. If something is necessary, it's needed, and you can't do without it. It's necessary to return the books when they're due. Necessary. You can't do without it. It's needed. Unsurpassed is the next word. It's got this prefix un and surpass with ed suffix at the end. If something is unsurpassed, there's nothing that's better. So surpass means to go past something or be better than something, but this is unsurpassed. There's nothing that's better. The experience was unsurpassed, and I'll never have another like it. 3 is the word stir. Now, you can stir something if you're stirring some chocolate into your milk in the morning or something, but this is a different kind of stir. This kind of stir is this. If you cause a stir, you create a strong feeling such as excitement or shock. If you cause a stir, you'll be asked to leave. So this is like doing something that gets everybody's attention. If you were sitting at your dinner table and a squirrel jumped in the window and jumped in the middle of your table, that squirrel would cause a stir, wouldn't it? Create strong feelings of excitement or shock. So this kind of stir is strong feelings. It creates excitement or shock. And number 4 down here is extraordinarily. Extraordinarily. If something is done extraordinarily, it's very unusual or remarkable in some way. I am an extraordinarily strong swimmer. Remarkable in some way is what extraordinarily means. So let's take this word apart. Ordinary, if something's ordinary, it's just regular. If something is extraordinary, it's more than ordinary. And we put this ly at the end, it means it's done in a certain way. So we do something extraordinarily. All right, let's move on to these last 2 words here. And we have cruising. I like to do that, don't you? If you're cruising, you're traveling in a boat for fun. How many of you have ever been on a cruise? Have you been on a cruise before? I've been on two. I went when I graduated high school with my friend Travis Stansel. He's a resource officer at the high school now. But he and I went on a cruise together when we graduated high school. We had a lot of fun. And I went when I got married to my wife. Her parents gave us a cruise, which was a very, very nice wedding gift. So we went on cruises. Cruising, you're traveling in a boat for fun. It's a lot of fun. Lots to eat, lots of swimming, lots of fun things to do. Cruising all day in the bright sun gave me a bad sunburn. And plunges. If something plunges into something, it falls or is thrown in that direction. I'm thankful I didn't plunge into the ocean by falling off my cruise ship, right? After he plunges into the water, there's no sign of him for several seconds. So plunges, you fall or thrown into something or thrown in a certain direction. So we'll come back and practice those words some more tomorrow. But know these 6 words for the stories this week: necessary, unsurpassed, stir, extraordinarily, cruising, and plunges. Now, thinking about poetry like we're going to be looking at this week, we're going to go back to this anchor chart today of visualizing. Visualizing helps you write poems because visualizing uses our senses to create pictures in our mind. The little girl telling the poem we started with today, could you feel the anxiety in her as she was trying to get something down on paper but just couldn't have anything come to her mind? She talked about feeling that pencil, taking that pencil and just starting to write. Could you imagine the pencil in your hand writing? Visualizing, using your senses to create pictures in your mind as you read. So a good poem will cause you to see a picture in your mind. Hopefully you can see my little gray and white cat when I read my poem about Shasta to you. You might have a poem that creates a sense of smell. Maybe it's a poem about spring flowers and makes you feel like you can smell the flowers. What would I hear? One of my poems is this week I'm going to share with you is about football and the Super Bowl. You would hear a large crowd. You could hear cheering, maybe hear the quarterback going, hut, hut. It's a football game. If you have a poem about that, you could write in a way that would cause the reader to hear something, or when you're reading something, you can visualize what you might hear. What would you taste? Another one of my poems this week is about ribs. I love ribs, my favorite food. And I used a lot of expressive words in there to make you taste ribs in my poem. You'll see that one later. What would I feel? Maybe it's a poem about a soft pillow in it, or a cloud, or a fluffy cat. You might feel might put words in your mind that cause you to feel something. You're imagining it in your mind. You're visualizing it. So I want you to think about this as you write your own poems. As we read the poems this week, think about what it means to visualize, to create pictures in our mind of what we see, smell, hear, taste, or touch, or feel. So let's get into our poem for this week. Okay, get your reading book out, and I want you to open it. I'll look in a minute, see what page it is. 1 second. We'll figure out what page I need you to open to. Maybe in a minute. I still can't see the page number. Okay, sorry. 359. If you'll turn to 359 in your reading book. This is the last story in the reading book. So if you haven't come and gotten your next reading book yet, I think there's 3 of you that haven't. They're sitting in the office waiting for you to come. You're going to need them next week or you won't have a book to read from. So the art of poetry is what this story is called. And this genre is poetry. It's a story full of poems. Poetry uses the sounds and rhythms of words to show images and express feelings. Sound and rhythm of words to show images, that visualizing, and express feelings. Sometimes poems can be very meaningful. They can express some really strong feelings. Poems may be written in one of several styles, such as lyric, acrostic, concrete, or narrative. Poets often use figurative language. We're going to look at that again this week, such as similes and metaphors in poems. Poets might organize a poem into stanzas, which is a series of lines grouped together. Each stanzas build upon what's described in the previous stanza. Remember, stories have paragraphs, poems have stanzas. Okay, so let's get into the story, The Art of Poetry, illustrated by Marina Sion. Okay, this first poem is called Necessary Gardens. Libraries are necessary gardens, unsurpassed at growing excitement. Now look at that poem right there. That's like my cat poem, isn't it? About the poem about my cat. It's my cat poem spelled Shasta going down. This one, what does it spell going down? Language. Language. And we see two of our vocabulary words here, necessary and unsurpassed. But let's get past all that and let's talk about the meaning of this poem. Necessary gardens. Libraries are necessary gardens, unsurpassed at growing excitement. What in the world does that mean? Well, first off, I see some figurative language here, don't you? It calls libraries are necessary gardens. That's a metaphor, isn't it? It says libraries are gardens. They're necessary gardens. So how can a library be a garden? Well, if I went to my garden, I might pick some corn. I might pick some beans. I might pick a watermelon. And if I go to the library, I'm going to pick out a certain kind of book, aren't I? Maybe I'm in the mood to read a book about animals. Maybe I'm in the mood to read a book about sports. Maybe I'm in the mood to read a drama or some kind of mystery. I can go pick from the garden of the library whatever kind of book I want. And it's unsurpassed at growing excitement. So the garden of the library grows excitement because it can make us excited about what kind of book we might like to read and get us into a story. I wrote a poem about books and what they mean to me too. We'll share later this week. Next poem. All right, this poem. We've got a lot of visualization in this poem. It's called Eating Alphabet Soup. And the words in this poem make me taste that alphabet soup, that warm broth, and those soft noodles that are shaped like letters in it. Can you visualize that? Eating alphabet soup. My advice to the tablespoon slurper. Beware what you do with that scoop. The capitals, sir, can cause quite a stir in a bowlful of alphabet soup. This one rhymes, doesn't it? While K, Z, and B do the backstroke across this hot, steamy lagoon, the fun-loving vowels may want tiny towels to dry themselves off on the spoon. But when letters go swimming together in sentences nothing can beat, the pleasure of reading the food that you're eating. So dive in and bon appetit. How do you like that poem? I like that one. Let's look at a few things here. First off, here's one stanza, lines joined together. Here's another stanza, lines joined together. These lines joined together. Here, a third stanza. It's kind of unique how they wrote it. And poems can be done any way. There's not a whole lot of rules to how your poem might look. So he starts over here, and then it scoots way in on these two lines on all these stanzas, doesn't it? So the first stanza here is talking about the capitals causing a stir. Be careful what we do with the soup. Do you think stir is a play of words maybe? Maybe you stir your soup, but also the letters, the capital letters can cause quite a stir. They can give you some excitement. Maybe they spell a word. See any words spelled here with these letters? K, Z, and B do the backstroke. What's that? Can they really do the backstroke? Can noodles and soup, that's personification, isn't it? Giving them the ability to do something only humans can do. Across this hot, steamy lagoon, that's another metaphor. It's calling a bowl of soup a hot, steamy lagoon. Fun-loving vowels may want tiny towels, personification again, to dry themselves off on the spoon. When letters go swimming together in sentences nothing can beat, the pleasure of reading the food that you're eating. So when these letters form little sentences or little words, nothing can beat it. So dive in and bon appetit. It means enjoy your meal. I like that poem. This is a funny one. This poem is called The Big Word Girl. The Big Word Girl. Of all the clever girls I know, Elaine's the one who counts. But what she counts are syllables in words I can't pronounce. I took her to a horror show, Godzilla meets Tooth Fairy, but she could not unglue her eyes from Webster's dictionary. She put her trembling hand in mine. Godzilla smashed the floor, for she had come across a word she'd never seen before. But when the lights came on, Elaine was sound asleep and snoring. I woke her up. She yawned and said, "How uncustomarily, extraordinarily, incomprehensibly boring." What do you think? It's a rhyming poem. You see the rhyme pattern here. Counts, pronounce, fairy, dictionary. So the second and fourth line of each stanza rhymes. Except when we get here, it's different, isn't it? It's still the second and fourth. Floor, before, snoring, and boring. And the big word girl uses these big words at the end. So, interesting poem. She's more interested in the words than a Godzilla scary movie. This must be her down here in her dictionary. The big word girl. Okay. This poem, when I first looked at it, I thought, what in the world? Ball on? I didn't understand it until I read the poem, and this L looks like a balloon, and it's supposed to be floating off. We'll find out why. So let's read this poem called Balloon. Before we read it, I want you to look at the shape of the poem. It makes a balloon, doesn't it? So this poem is written in the shape of what its topic is, of what it's about. When it first slipped out of my hand, I was sad to see my balloon floating away. But as it rose higher in the sky, I imagined it landing in some faraway yard where a kid like me would find it and wonder how far the balloon had flown and who held it last. And that thought made me smile. I like that poem. It doesn't rhyme, does it? It's kind of just a thought about a balloon. Poems don't have to rhyme. They can. But this is just a thought about a balloon. And it's a emotional poem. It's got emotions in it. He felt sad because his balloon floated away, but then he got excited and uses imagination. We have some visualization here of that balloon floating to a faraway land and some kid finding it and wonder how far it had flown and who had let go of it. And then his emotions changed to a smile. That's a neat poem. This poem is kind of deep. The arrow in the song. I shot an arrow into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For so swiftly it flew, the sight could not follow it in its flight. I breathed a song into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For who has sight so keen and strong that it can follow the flight of song? Long, long afterward, in an oak, I found the arrow still unbroke. And the song from beginning to end, I found again in the heart of a friend. Wow, that's by a famous poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. So, what's this poem about? It's about an arrow and a song and kind of comparing an arrow to a song, isn't it? You pull back and you just let it fly and see where it goes. He couldn't see it. He could not follow its flight. Breathe a song into the air. Do you think he's talking about a song or maybe a poem or maybe a literal song? I don't know. He breathed a song into the air. It fell to earth. I knew not where. Who can follow a flight of a song? Maybe it's a song about his thoughts, his emotions. Long, long afterward in an oak, he found the arrow still unbroke. So maybe many years, many days, long, long afterward, he found his arrow. It got stuck in a tree. It wasn't broken. And he found the song again in the heart of a friend. So shooting an arrow is going to land it somewhere else. We might find it later. Sharing a song, a poem, a thought It's going to go somewhere, isn't it? Maybe you say something nice to somebody and it lives in their heart. He found his poem again in the heart of a friend. Deep poem. Okay, this page has the same poem in English and in Spanish. So, Gardenia, you might be listening to this. I think you're the only one of us who can speak Spanish, so don't make fun of my reading of it in Spanish, okay, Gardenia? Better fun. Cruising this river on a rubber boat at full speed, bumping our way to the base of the thundering falls, to end up completely slapped and drenched by the cool river water, beats by far any amusement park attraction. So they're whitewater rafting, aren't they? They're riding a rubber raft through the water, full speed, moving quickly. Visualize there. What would you feel if you were in there? That water splashing, it's bumping. You're drenched, you're slapped. That water's slapping you as it comes into the boat by cool river water. Oh, it feels so cool in the rivers. And it says riding in a tube like that or a whitewater rafting is better than any amusement park ride. I've been whitewater rafting one time. It was exciting. Yes, it was sure bumpy, and I was sure slapped and drenched with water. I'll tell you my quick story about whitewater rafting. It was on the Ocoee River in Tennessee. And the Ocoee River, we were going down the river, and the river narrowed. And right where it narrowed, there was a huge rock. And they said, we cannot hit that rock. We have to make sure we paddle hard and go around it, because if we hit it, it's going to be a rough ride, because water kind of dropped off and it kind of shot you really fast toward the rock. Well, I was sitting up front, and our whitewater raft hit that rock. We didn't turn fast enough. And when we hit it, I'm a big guy, but we hit it with enough force that I flew out and did a flip in the air and landed on my back in that fast flowing water. And it shot me down the river so hard. The current was so strong, it pulled my shoes off and left me barefoot, just about pulled my swimming trunks off, which would have been really bad, but it didn't, thankfully. And I couldn't catch my breath. I was bouncing off rocks. I thought I was going to drown. That was one of the most scariest things that's ever happened to me. But finally, the river slowed down, and I grabbed a hold of another raft, and they pulled me up on their raft and had to go on a different raft the rest of the ride. That was scary. It was exciting for sure. I don't know if it was better fun or safer fun. It was fun. It was scary fun. Let me try to read this poem in Spanish. Mejor diversión. Recorrer este río en un gomón a toda velocidad. Now, let's look at this. You see velocidad. Does that remind you of a science word, velocity or speed? There's a Spanish word for speed, velocidad. Rio, you all ever seen the movie Rio? It means river. Acercarse a tumbos hasta quedar en la base del treño de la cascada para acabar completamente cacheteados y empapados por el agua fría del río. Agua is water. I bet you know that. Rio is river. What is it? Cool, fría means you're cold. Cool river from the water. Cool water from the river. Supera de veras en mucho cualquier atracción de un parque de diversión. Well, there it is in Spanish and English. English and Spanish. Okay, next poem. We've got the same thing again. Got a different kind of water. We had the fast-moving water in the last poem, and now we've got quiet water. Water before it plunges down a waterfall is as still as a mirror facing the sky. Oh, we've got a simile there, don't we? It's comparing water to it's as still as a mirror. So when we use like or as, we have a simile. So water being still, quiet water is like a mirror, it says, facing the sky. And then in Spanish, agua quieta. El agua antes de caer en catarata. En tan quieta como espejo de cara el cielo. It's a beautiful picture, isn't it? Quiet water. And That's the end of the poems. What did you think about those poems? I really like poems. I just love reading them. I love trying to write them, and you're going to get to write them. Well, let's take a look at some words today as we move away from the poems for just a minute. We're going to keep working with this thought of root words and adding suffixes to the end of them. So recognizing the root word before a suffix can help you decode the word. So when we're trying to read and we don't know a word, what decode means trying to figure it out. Like you're a detective, you're using what you know about the root words or suffixes and prefixes to try to read it. Suffixes may change the spellings of root words. We're going to see in our spelling list in just a minute. We have to drop a Y sometimes before we add the suffix at the end of the word. And it looks like most of these, if not all of these, ended with a Y, and we had to change it. So happier, root word would have been happy, ended with a Y, had to change the Y to I and add ER. Shinier would have been the root word of shiny. Crazier, root word crazy, all these end with Y. Friendlier, root word would have been friend, and then Lee. Scarier, root word scary. Happiest, root word happy. Shiniest, root word shiny. Craziest would have the root word crazy. Now notice what's happening to every one of these. Where there would have been a Y, it's dropped the Y, and add the I, and then the rest of the prefix, or suffix rather. Friendliest, scariest, scary. Fried, root word fry. Applied, root word apply. Carried would have the root word carry. Hurried would have the root word hurry. Implied would have a root word imply. Okay, bunnies, root word bunny. Candies, root word candy. Armies, root word army. Gypsies, root word gypsy. Libraries, root word library. Notice we're adding IES to these. These were IED. These were IEST and IER. And here's a mix of them down here. Luckier, root word lucky. Scurries, root word scurry. Silliest, root word silly. Bakeries, root word would have been bakery. And dried, the root word would have been dry. And then we've got some words in here, fluffiest and scurried. The fluffiest kitten scurried across the room. Scurried means crawl around, move around across the room. So as you can see, words that end in Y, quite often we have to drop the Y, change it to I before we add that suffix at the end of the words. And those words like that are on our spelling list this week. So here's our spelling list. I'm just going to read these words to you. At one time, they all ended with a Y, and then the Y was dropped, and I was added, and then we add the rest of the suffix at the end. Tiniest, hobbies, copied, countries, pitied, easier, laziest, families, spied, happiest, ladies, friendlier, studied, busier, breezier, prettiest, must be talking about me, noisier, healthier, butterflies, funniest, memories, terrified, scariest, and victories. So each one of our spelling words have the Y changed to an I, and then it ends in EST or ES or ED or ER. So take a look at these. Make sure you might want to jot these down so you can study them this week. We are going to do a spelling practice today. So choose the one that's spelled correctly. Also, I want you to be thinking about your own poem. So I shared mine with you about my cat. So I want you to be thinking about a topic that you can write a poem about. You have all week to write this poem. And I'm not going to give a whole lot of direction because you might want to write a poem that's kind of an acrostic like this. You might want to write a poem that's the shape of a balloon, gardenia, or maybe somebody else might want to write a poem in Spanish and English. There's lots of things that we could do, and we'll be looking at some more poems each day this week. So Maybe today you just want to kind of think of something that would be easy to write about. And as you write poems, I want you to think about words that are descriptive. And that's what we're going to be working on in language this week. Words that describe. And words that describe are called adjectives. And so I want you to look at my poem for some adjectives. So words that describe my cat. A plump cat. I mean, she's kind of fat, right? A round cat. These are adjectives. They're words that describe. It's what words describe the hair. Gray hair. Colors can be adjectives. White hair can be colors can be adjectives. Let's see what if we can find any more. I guess that's about all the adjectives in my poem here, but words that describe. So we'll be working with adjectives some, and hopefully that will help you come up with some very descriptive words that can help us visualize your poem. And I'm anxious to see the poems that you come up with. Everybody's got to write at least one poem. If you can write 2 poems, 2 good poems this week, I'll give you an extra 100. If you can write 2 poems, an extra credit 100 score in ELA for this 9 weeks, okay? Up to you. Maybe you enjoy writing poems. If you do, write 2. All right. Well, today for me, like I said, you've got some spelling practice. You've got some adjective practice. Watch a little bit more about adjectives on the next slide, and you'll find out some more about them. And then also, I want you to be thinking about what kind of poem that you're going to be writing. All right. Thank you for being a good listener. We'll see you tomorrow.